If there is a slide in this video cast with music, it is meant to be paused and read. We're going to be examining the Last Supper of Jesus by looking at the chronological events that took place during Passover week at the time of Jesus' death. First thing you're going to see in this video cast is a reoccurring theme, and that is this table that is on here. We're also looking at Nisan 8, and that was the month by Jewish tradition that the Passover had to take place. The table represents the Jewish day, which began at 6 p.m. instead of 12 a.m., a very important thing we have to remember as we move through the slides. This is a crucial turning point in world history, the Last Supper. Whether you are a believer or not, politics and history would be skewed from this point forward. It's the end of winter and the beginning of spring at this time as well. Passover pilgrims are coming into Jerusalem by the hundreds of thousands, and the city would swell to 350,000 people, and they would sleep in tents. The Roman authorities would also increase at this time as well. Nisan 9, after we do some historical research, is the Saturday. It's also the Jewish Sabbath. This is the day before Jesus' triumphal entry, or Palm Sunday. A couple things to know. It was the Sabbath, so there was no work allowed on the Sabbath. And there was not even walking allowed on the Sabbath. You were not allowed to go much more than 1,000 paces, or let's just say maybe 3,000 feet. It was restricted. So Jesus is now in Jerusalem, and he's spending the night in Bethany, which is just a short walk from Jerusalem. It's Nisan 10, or Sunday of the Passover week. It's the beginning of the Jewish week, and Jesus makes his triumphal entry, probably coming in from Bethany. He comes arriving on a donkey, and a donkey by Eastern tradition is an animal of peace. If a king came riding on a horse, he meant to do war. So a horse was an animal of war, and a donkey was considered an animal of peace. They laid palm fronds in front of Jesus, and in the Jewish tradition at the time, palm fronds were considered a symbol of triumph and victory. Also, today is the presentation of the Passover lamb, Nisan 10. And what has to happen by Jewish custom is that the lamb has to be inspected for the next 4 days to make sure it's a perfect lamb. It cannot have any broken bones. And so by Jewish custom of the time, the elders inspected the lambs to make sure that it was the perfect sacrifice for Passover. It is also Jesus' day one of examining in the temple, where he went every day during Passover week. It is now Nisan 11, Monday of the Passover week. Jesus, this is his day 2 of examining. He'll go to the temple and he'll be preaching in the temple today. So people are examining him to make sure that he is the perfect Passover lamb. It's also the day that Jesus curses the fig tree, and he will most likely go back out and spend the night in Bethany once again. It's Nisan 12, which is Tuesday, and this is Jesus' third day of examining. He'll be in the temple courts. This is the day when the Sadducees and the others try to trap him into saying things that they could arrest him for. So this is a day of examining again, the third day of examining. Also, it's the day Jesus gives the Olivet Discourse, which is funny because it's the day before the fourth day of examining, the final day. And also he speaks about the end times when he will return after his death. It's Wednesday, Nisan 13. It's the fourth day of examining for Jesus, and he is having dinner at 6 p.m., the beginning of Wednesday, by Jewish days. And Mary Magdalene supposedly comes in. We're not quite sure of that, but she brings a jar of spikenard perfume, an extremely expensive jar of perfume at the time, a year's wages for a jar of this. It is very aromatic, and the minute she opened the jar and anointed his feet, everyone in the room would have known about it. Also, Jewish custom at the time was to anoint a person's feet meant a act of death. It was preparation for burial, and this was not lost on Jesus at this time. Also, in the morning of this day, the disciples are asking where to make the Passover meal, and this is very important. By Jewish tradition and custom, you had to sweep the room clean of all the yeast. You had to look everywhere and get yeast out of everything, because yeast, by Jewish tradition, symbolized sin. It's Thursday night, Nisan 14th at 6 p.m., and Jesus is having a Passover meal with his disciples in the upper room. They leave there and go to the Mount of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus spent a lot of time. He was arrested at night, and the trial for Jesus, there was actually 6 separate trials if you really examine it, which is a story in itself, happened from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. A couple things we should know is Tiberius was a ruler of Rome, and the Jews were not allowed to commit capital punishment under his rule. If they could have had capital punishment, they probably would have stoned him to death, because that was their preferred method of killing. The capital punishment under Rome was crucifixion. The Jews did not try him for treason. They tried him for blasphemy, and blasphemy was not a crime under Roman law. But treason, if you could convict someone for treason, was instant death, basically under Roman law. A couple of other strange things under Jewish custom about Jewish trials to show you how bogus this was. If a man was arrested for a capital crime, he could never be arrested at night. That was a tradition or a rule under Jewish trials. If a man was arrested for a capital crime, no one cooperating in the arrest could be in any way connected to the one who was accused. So Judas should not have been able to go up and do anything with this. No arrest for a capital crime could be made based upon information given by a follower or colleague of the accused. That was a law of Jewish trials. No Jewish trial could ever be held at night. The law stated it must be held in the daytime. The members of the Jewish court, after hearing the testimony of true witnesses of a capital crime, could not immediately act or judge. They were to go home and remain alone and separate from one another for 2 days, at least one full day, thinking about the testimony before anything ever happened. There was even a special method of voting. In other words, when they came back after 2 days, what they were supposed to do during Jewish trials was the youngest was supposed to vote first, so they would not be influenced by the older people voting. This never happened. So the entire Jewish trial was kind of a mockery. Jesus is most likely crucified in the 3rd hour, or 9 a.m. of the Jewish day. Darkness covered the land from that time up until 3 p.m. Jesus dies about 3 p.m. On the first evening of unleavened bread. This is the same time that they are killing the paschal lambs for the Passover. And the High Holy Day is just approaching as Jesus dies. The High Holy Day will be at 6 p.m. It's important to note on Nisan 14, Thursday as well, that Jesus told of a sign he would give, and that was the sign of Jonah, that he would be 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale, which was his foretelling his death and resurrection. It's 3 p.m. when Jesus died, and Joseph of Arimathea goes to Pilate and asks for the body of Jesus. He's surprised that he's dead already, and they check. They don't break his bones. They do break the other two's bones, but they do not break Jesus's legs, which is the perfect paschal lamb. He is dead. They pierce his side, and water comes out, which they find out he's dead. So, anyways, Joseph of Arimathea has to work very fast because he has to be done before 6 p.m., which is Nisan 15, which is the Passover meal. And Joseph of Arimathea has to have him buried and with a stone over his tomb by then. So he's doing this very hastily because Jesus is dead at 3 p.m. He goes to Pilate, which is probably very quickly after, and then they have to check that he's dead. Then they have to get him down. They have to give him the body. He has to get him prepared with spices, etc., get him wrapped in linen, and get him in a tomb, all before 6 p.m. of the high holy Jewish Passover day. So it's important to note, because this also, as long as Jesus was in the tomb before 6 p.m., this would mark the first day that he was dead in the tomb. It is Nisan 15. It is Friday. It is Passover. It's a Jewish high holy day, as is the Sabbath. There is no work today for the Jewish people of this week. It's the Passover, and there is no walking. It is just like the Sabbath would be. It is Jesus' second day in the tomb by Jewish chronology of days. It is Nisan 16. It is Saturday, and this is the regular Jewish Sabbath. So right after the Passover, there was a regular Jewish Sabbath. So no one could work or walk on Friday. No one could work or walk on Saturday. So the first time that we can even get to Jesus' tomb, or the Jews can officially get to Jesus' tomb, is Sunday morning.